Let's have a chat about theories and why people should not look at events in the past through the lens of today. Now, I literally just saw this morning, and as soon as I saw it, I had some feelings and I wanted to share them with you. And I'm hoping to open up the conversation because clearly I'm not trans. But here's the thing, there's a trans person, I believe they're an activist. I'm not going to name them, and I'm going to keep using them, they, them pronouns just because I don't want to call attention to the person. I'm more interested in their theory and how people tend to look at things from the past with what we know now, and why I think that leads to a lot of misinterpretations. So this person's theory is that Kurt Cobain is trans. Now, Kurt Cobain was born in February of 1967, and I did look it up right before I started making this video. He is 3 months younger than me. If he was still alive, he would be turning 57 in a month. That makes him Generation X. Now, I don't know how much you know about Generation X, but I'm going to give it to you based on my personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. We are the generation who had Boy George, Annie Lennox, and, oh God, I forgot his name, but the guy from Dead or Alive, who all were gender bending in their clothing and their expression. Their artistic expression was all about breaking the rules. The generation before us apparently doesn't remember that well, but they had David Bowie. Just to give you examples of people that, we had The Cure. We also had Duran Duran, although they didn't wear that much makeup. We had a lot of bands, Depeche Mode, among others, who loved to wear eyeliner, and they had their own expressions. Some of them only wore eyeliner, some of them wore lipsticks. The bottom line is that we were the ones who started this whole thing about we don't care what your rules about clothing are. Except for David Bowie and maybe a couple of other people. I want to say Freddie Mercury and the lead singer of Judas Priest, whose name escapes me at the moment. There was not a lot of people that were doing this that were straight. The people that did it back in those days, the generation before ours, were usually either gay or bisexual, and they wanted people to believe. I mean, look at Alice Cooper, okay? So then you go to our generation, and you have the lead singer of The Cure, who is, I believe, straight, who, to be honest with you, I never saw him without red lipstick and better eyeliner than I ever had. More importantly, it translates to people, normal human beings, like me and you and everybody else, who like to wear certain things more than others. I feel a lot more comfortable in a man's suit with a white shirt and a tie and nice closed shoes than I do in a dress. If you give me both options, I will always go for the suit and tie. I feel better in that kind of clothing than I do in what girly girls would like. That emo generation that was wearing the boots with the mini skirts, we did that also. Why? Because it was more comfortable for us. We didn't really care for the rules of, oh, you have to be dainty and wear this and no. I was a tomboy growing up. In fact, there was suspicion that I was not going to be marrying a man at 21 and still be married to the same guy at 57. That's how much of a tomboy I was. There were moments in my life when, yes, I said I would have much rather been a guy, because men get away with a lot of things that women do not to this day. That doesn't mean I'm trans at all. The fact that Kurt Cobain wore dresses or wrote a line or throwaway line on a song, or unless you have direct evidence that tells you that somebody who is no longer here to defend themselves was trans, I don't see the reason for this. And the problem with this, there's two problems with this whole theory. Problem number one is this kind of speculation is the reason why the white Christian right-wingers tend to talk about the agenda, the trans agenda, and the gay agenda, and all this other stuff. Because people like this person, instead of explaining that this is a theory based on what they've seen and whatnot, no, the actual line under the video says Kurt Cobain was trans. You don't know that. You have no way of finding that out at this point. Nobody's going to answer that question. And you're speculating and creating a narrative because I don't even know why you're doing this. It's kind of like when you look at a lot of videos of old Hollywood, and pretty much every actor in old Hollywood is called gay. Do I know that they were gay? No. Do I care if they were gay? Absolutely not. If they can act, I don't care if they act straight or gay. If they can act, let them act. Does it matter? No. Are you hurting people that might have been children of this person and don't know if their parents were or were not? Yes. Why is that necessary? We have plenty of celebrities now. We have plenty of examples now of people that have lead wonderful lives. They're still alive and they can speak for themselves. That's issue number one. Issue number two is this idea that we're going to take everything that happens in the planet and we're going to judge it by the lens of what we know now. For example, Oompa Loompas and the flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz. Oompa Loompas obviously in Willy Wonka. And the flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz. Oh, that has to be referring to black people because they were slaves. I understand your logic, but here's the thing. Before there were black slaves, there were Jewish slaves. If you don't remember the story of Moses, then I can't help you. Now, we can go and spend the entire day going whether or not they were black or not. I'm not going to get into that debate right now. But there have been slaves in many other communities. It's just because the way they were treated is different according to you than anybody else, that's irrelevant. The concept of slavery, the concept of taking people and taking them under your wing and bringing them to a different country to work for you, and you pay for everything, but they don't have a salary per se. We don't know if the Oompa Loompas had a salary. We never asked them. That was never a consideration on the book. So we don't know. The only thing we know is that this guy grabbed all these green little people and brought them to the... Oh, they're making reference to the pygmies because the original version of the book, you know what? I don't care. Because here's the thing. Little kid me, my daughter, when she was a little kid, we just saw green little people that were in a movie or in a book. We don't care. The whole idea that everything we see today, we base it on the lens everything that we saw in the past, we base it on the lens of today. It's problematic, and it leads to conversations that don't need to be had when we have so many examples of those situations today. Human relations are alive and well today, good ones and bad ones, that we can use for examples for everything. We really don't need to go and get examples from the past and switch them for our narrative. I'm not saying you're wrong on the Oompa Loompas. I'm not saying you're wrong about the flying monkeys. What I'm saying is that we have examples today of misbehavior with people that are alive to either defend themselves or tell you that you're right. I mean, there's some things that are written today that are horrible depictions of certain people based on this idea that some particular race is better than another one. We don't need to go to the past to do that. We can enjoy the material of the past without taking all this new information that we've gathered throughout the years. And more importantly, and this is the part that every single time we have this conversation, we forget. I don't care what marginalized community you belong to. LGBTQ community, the African American community, the Latino community, the Asian community. I don't care which group you're involved with. There is always this whole conversation about trying to change, to decide how people see things. My favorite movie of all time is The Wizard of Oz, followed very closely by the show Wicked. Here's the thing. Not once when I was a kid, and believe me, I saw it every year when I was a kid. Not once did I think that the Flying Monkeys was referencing black people. I didn't even have the reference of that particular animal being a slur for African Americans until I was 40 years old living in the United States. Because that's not the reference we use when we're growing up. And I've seen people lose their jobs. I've seen people get into lots of trouble for references that when you are not born and raised here in the United States of America, you don't use those references. So you have no idea what they're talking about. And some people, I'm not saying all people, have this really bad habit of determining that because you like a particular show or a particular movie or a particular book, you must be X, Y, or Z. Based on what we now know about the author or what we now know about the people working on the particular corporation or whatever. If you want to have a true conversation and educate people on what certain references mean, the best way to do that is to ask them how they interpreted whatever they saw or whatever they read or whatever. So long as you keep using this reference, for example, Elvis Presley stole from black people, or this particular... Listen, when I was growing up, black artists and white artists loved to collaborate. Best example I can give you is Michael Jackson with Paul McCartney. It's a great example because the two songs that I'm thinking about are still popular to this day. Here's the thing. There's a lot of artists back in those days that just love certain music and they used it on their own music. They used it as inspiration for their own music. You can say they appropriated all they want, but they didn't see it that way. And guess what? The people that grew up listening to that music didn't see it that way either. That doesn't make any of us racist or whatever. It just makes us people that like music that were inspired by people who like music that listen to certain things. I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. Because what I'm trying to say is really simple. Stop giving your interpretation of things to what people say and do. If you are so bent out of shape by what somebody said or did, ask them why they did it and what it meant. We would have 50% less problems in this particular country if we actually took the time to find out why people do what they do. And with that, I'm going to leave it to you. Do you really think that talking about somebody, and by the way, I forgot one little thing that really bothered me about this video. Kurt Cobain is dead. He's been dead since 1994. It's going to be 30 years this year because it was April. What do you gain from speculating on someone who is no longer alive? And yes, did I feel like they were trying to say that that's why he is no longer here? Absolutely. That bothered me too. Because at the end of the day, when we hear stories of people that delete themselves, we have no way of knowing unless they left a letter where they're very specific. We don't have any way of knowing why they did it. But you're speculating on the fact that this person was trans and that's why they did it. It's very disrespectful. It's just, in my opinion, it is wrong. And here's the thing. People say, well, just because they're dead, it doesn't mean we can't talk about them. And I agree with you. You can talk about Kurt Cobain all day if you want to talk about Kurt Cobain. But speculating about his gender, orientation, sexual orientation, anything should not be the reason why you become famous. Because I can guarantee you this person is going to get a lot of attention because of this. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.